Hello, number ones, and welcome to Metatron's Academy. I'm here today because I want to see if I can learn to pick up a little bit of an Australian accent. So without further ado, let's choose a video. We've got a few. How to do an Australian accent 10 years ago. Holy moly, this guy's like a father with 3 children now. How to speak in an Australian accent 13 years ago. Australian accent tips 8 years ago. Goodness, because no one is doing this anymore. 15 years ago. Next one is going to be 150 years ago. All right, well, anyways, let's try the first one. Let's go.
Hello, I'm Gareth Jameson. I'm an actor and a voice coach from www.londonvoicelessons.com. Here are some tips for working on your voice.
So we're gonna hear a professional first who is not Australian and puts it on, can't even speak, and then we'll look for an Australian and see if we can spot the difference.
The key to any accent is to isolate the specific sounds that occur in that accent. So when we look at the Australian accent, we'll be looking at which vowel sounds and which consonants are used in Australia. So let's start with the I sound.
I think it's important to underline, however, I say this as a language guy, that when he says he's trying to isolate what sounds and whatever they use in Australia, do keep in mind that there is more than one Australian accent within the entirety of Australia. Not to mention that there's also a difference in even people from the same town might have different accents. There is a matter of class, social class perhaps, in the level of education. I'm not sure. Anyways, we are probably looking into the most stereotypical Australian accent. But yeah, just to say.
That I would normally pronounce as like and right and live.
Like, right, and live. Yeah, probably I say it like that.
For Australians, this becomes a little bit like oi in oil. Don't go that far though, so don't say like and right. It'll sound ridiculous. It's more like and right.
Like and right. It's, I think it's a common aspect with Cockney, isn't it? Sort of. Not exactly the same, but I can't understand exactly what the difference is.
And live, right.
Right.
Sign, live. Listen again to that word right. That's R-I-G-H-T, right, right. You notice that the T has disappeared from the end of the word.
Yeah. Well, this happens a lot in English accents too, depending.
It's called a glottal stop and is very common in Australia. The way you want to make your glottal stop, if you don't know how to do it, is to start with the phrase, uh-oh.
Yep, uh-oh, like in the cartoons.
Uh-oh. And it's the little sound you get in the middle there, uh-oh. So try putting that on the end of your word, right. Right.
Right.
If this sounds a little bit like Cockney to you,
there you go.
There's a reason for this. The Australian accent developed from people from the southeast of England who went to live in Australia, and their accent changed. So it is very similar. The sound Cockney, oi, in all right, mate, is the same as the Australian, all right, mate? But there is a difference here.
Right.
And if you've got a Cockney accent and you want to turn it into an Australian one, your best bet is to change your voice from a dry sound to a twangy sound. So we go from, all right, mate,
all right,
to, all right, mate, real twang.
There isn't a huge difference there for me to spot.
Also, Australians tend to have a high rising terminal. That's a technical term for sentences that go up at the end, like this, sometimes called the Australian question inflection, goes up like this. Now, that's very easy to do, and some people find it annoying, but it is key for that Australian accent. So you've got
Up to this point, that didn't sound very Australian to me, however, so I might need to find not that I'm an expert, but I'm saying I might need to find an actual Australian.
Difference between a Cockney, all right, mate, and an
I see.
Australian, all right, mate, going up at
the now I see. All right, mate. Rather, all right, mate. I see.
Let's also look at the A sound.
Oh, that's actually interesting.
No way. This becomes more
So before he goes into that, because that's one that I really like, but I want to say there is a similitude when it comes to that, something similar with Sicily. So Western Sicilian versus Eastern Sicilian, a big difference is that Eastern Sicilian does have that terminal rise he's talking about, and they do tend to finish sentences in a way that to people who are not from there, to them they are speaking normally, but to people who are not from the east of Sicily, me included, I'm from the west, it does sound like they're asking a question at the end of every sentence, whereas we don't tend to do that, and instead in the west, in a Palermo accent versus Catania, in a Palermo accent instead, we sound like we are lazy and we don't really care. The same sentence would be like if I wanted to ask, did you close the door? In Palermo, I would say, Agurisa boaita. Agurisa boaita. So I'm like, ah. Instead, in Catania, not that I do it perfectly, but forgive me, but just to give an idea, it would be more like agurista botta, agurista botta. So I don't know if they do say curisti, to be honest, but we're just working on the intonation here. So yeah, they do have that thing. So I can relate to that. It's fascinating.
I. So, no way, mate. Going up, and you notice again, going up at the ends. No way, mate. Finally, let's look at a. The a you get in hat, or man, or camera. This changes to something a bit more like an eh sound, like
Really?
we would say in an egg. So you might say, I love that hat. That's that.
Right, yes. This is similar in South African English, I think. And it's actually a conservative feature within, we could say, I don't know, do you call them post-colonial accent? I don't know. Anyways, Australian, Kiwi, but also South African, they do have this short a that is more of a eh. And that is something that English people used to say it that way, particularly in the upper class. If you listen to the Queen, when she was young, she used to say Bank of England, bank, not bank. And she even experienced, since she was ancient, she experienced an actual linguistic transformation, but she did maintain some of those sounds until the very end. Now, of course, the way the Queen speaks is kind of special. I would say most people in England say often or often. She would say often. So yeah, it's Queen's English, like actual Queen. Still, that sound, even if you hear to her father, the king, and the recordings, happy, he would say happy, happy Christmas. He wouldn't say like happy. So that is something that sort of changed in England, but fascinating.
Hat. That hat. A great person to listen to for that sound is Jermaine
Gambison. All right, so let's look for someone else. Okay, I think she does a good job. I don't think she's Australian, but she does a really good job, I think.
Hey guys, so many of you have been asking,
Can you do a video on how to do an Australian accent?
well, okay, but I do think the Australian accent is one of the hardest to imitate. No pressure. So some people think Australians all sound like Steve Irwin. Crikey, have you seen this croc? Mate, it's a beauty. Truth is, not many Australians sound like that. This video isn't going to teach you how to speak like Steve Irwin. It's going to teach you a more general Australian accent. So the first rule with talking Australian is that we don't
Man, she's really close to the camera, isn't she?
pronounce the R's at the end of words. Ever.
Eva.
That was an example. Forever, together, shiver, river, car, instead of forever, together, river, shiver, car. And
Right.
we don't say G's at the end of words either. Catchin', fishin'.
Catching, fishing. I like how she does it with nonchalance.
It's a really lazy language.
You want us to pronounce the whole word? Nah, mate, I'm teaching here, alright?
The Australian accent really uses a lot of slang. So let's learn some.
Aussie slang.
Aussie, meaning Australian. Ambo, ambulance.
Really?
Bogan, meaning the lowest class Australian, wears thongs, drinks beer all day, doesn't have a job. Boogie board, it's like a mini surfboard. Bricky, a bricklayer. An esky, it's an ice cooler that keeps your drinks cold. Usually take them to barbecues and
Man, that's so specific.
stuff. G'day, which you would know means
G'day.
hello. I
G'day.
find mostly men use g'day and mate. I've never heard a lady say g'day unless she's a bogan. So, grog, alcohol.
Grog?
Hobo, homeless guy again. Ice block, icy pole, popsicle. Kindy, kindergarten. Lollies instead of sweets.
Yeah, oh, lollies. I think they say that in England too. So some of these might be more common between England and Australian than they would be between, say, America or... What, do Kiwis use the same slang? Probably not.
Or candy. Macca's, meaning McDonald's. Let's go to Macca's,
Really?
mate. Yeah. A pom or a pommy is a Englishman. Reckon, meaning...
Yeah, reckon is used in England too. I reckon.
Oh, reckon.
Not that I'm English, I'm not, but that's what I used to live in England. That's where I picked up my English, which is why it's kind of a mix between someone who's approximating and a muppet. That's my accent. It's someone who's approximating and a muppet.
Mate, rally, meaning relative. Right? Oh, she'll be right. That'd be right. A snag, sausage.
Really?
Trackies or trachydax. Tracksuit. Togs, meaning swimmers, swimsuit. Uggies or Uggs.
Man, it's another language.
Who has a different accent.
Which makes it even more complicated for you, mate.
Feel free to leave a video response of you guys having a go at the Australian accent. I'll give you a few sentences to start off. Hi, my name's blank. Insert name here. And I'm from Australia.
Australia. Oh no, this is mine. This is my take on the Australian accent. Let's go. Oh no. No. That's all I can do. Oh no. So.
Hello everyone, I'm Candice Mole and I am bringing you some Australian accent tips today. And today I have a really special video for you because I'm going to talk about the Australian melody, and I think that you might be interested in that. Learning the melody of any accent, in my opinion, is kind of the hardest part of learning an accent. And the reason for that is because it's all about your ear. The way that a lot of people learn different accents and dialects is to find the shape that their mouth should be in,
right,
and memorize how that feels. But you can't really do that with a melody of an accent. You just have to be able to hear it, and you kind of need to be able to hear it in your head to be able to replicate it, which is what makes it so tricky. So if you can't hear the melody to the Australian accent straight away, that's okay. A lot of people can't. So I would encourage you to just keep on practicing. Now, before we get into things, I want you to take a moment and hit that subscribe button if you're interested in the Australian accent. I do a lot of tutorial videos. I do some fun slang videos. So go ahead and hit subscribe.
Go.
And then at the end of this video, if you like it, give it a thumbs up if you found it helpful. All
She
right?
has a light Australian accent. That's what I would call it.
So, first things first, what is a melody in relation to accents and dialects?
Relation. Maybe it's not so light.
Basically, if you imagine the tune of a song, every accent has its own tune. It has its own ups and downs, its own inflections, its own rhythm. So all of these things make up the melody of an accent. So, for example, I would say for example. I'll use some stereotypes, okay?
Stereotypes.
So, for example, if I were to give a really awful stereotype of an Irish accent, I would say tiddly-tee potatoes. And the melody of that is do-do-do-do-do-do-do, right? Tiddly-tee potatoes, do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Can you hear it?
That sounds adorable.
Or if I were to do a really bad rendition of an Italian accent...
Uh-oh. Careful what you say.
I would go, Italian! Da-da-da-da-da. So
It's a bit exaggerated.
it has its own rhythm and it has its own melody. Very sorry to anyone who is Italian or Irish.
Thank you. I appreciate the apology.
When it comes to the melody of the Australian accent,
Please.
I'm going to give you just a couple of things to look out for. When you're practicing, the only way to get really good at hearing a melody or mimicking a melody is to listen to that accent on repetition.
Right.
Like I just did then with my bad Irish and my bad Italian accents. If you listen to somebody with a specific accent, listen to a sentence, and then try and copy how they sounded without using words. You can use a do-do-do or a da-da-da.
That's actually a very nice tip.
Try to mimic the sound without using their words. YouTube's great for this. You can look up anyone on YouTube. You can look up any kind of accent and find someone speaking in that accent. I would suggest in your practice that you don't practice with people who teach, with actors, or with news presenters.
Makes sense.
And the reason for that is because you might notice my melody changes when I'm teaching rather than when I'm just chatting.
That's probably why I was like, it sounds a little light, but then occasionally it doesn't, because she was probably moving between the teacher's talk, and which you can still tell she's from Australia, but it's not as thick. And then when she's actually using the word, whatever, you know what I'm saying.
So the best way to practice an accent is really to look up people who are speaking naturally, and a
conversation.
really great way to do that is to search for somebody being interviewed.
Right.
So I jumped out of bed and all I had was my undies on, and I've walked out the front and I've seen the car smashed, and I've seen the bloke walking back to the car.
Let's look at the first important part of the
Are you sure that's a good one?
Australian accent melody, and that is everything's a question until it's not. A lot of people know the first part of this.
First part.
The fact that everything's a question, right? You'll hear people say, oh, Australians are so weird, or they're so funny because everything sounds like a question, and I never know when they're asking a question because it goes up at the end all the time. That's true, but
that's very nice, actually.
Actually a little bit more detailed than that.
Detailed. It's also the way she says detailed. Detailed. It's detailed.
I nearly just went, it's actually a bit more detailed than that.
She did. She's great. She's my favourite so far.
It's actually a little bit more detailed than that. And what I mean when I say that is that this up inflection implies a continuation. So it's often used in storytelling. If you've got someone that's trying to tell a story of what happened to them at the shops today, every sentence will go up at the end because I went to the shops, and when I got to the shops it was really busy, and I went into the shops and I found the shop that I was looking for. So the story's not finished yet. Do you hear that? But when the story's finished, that final sentence will come down. So I went to the shops and I found the shop that I was looking for, and they had the shoes I wanted. Full stop.
Cool.
That coming down at the end is the full stop on the end of the story. I always say that the best way to learn an accent of any kind or a dialect of any kind is to listen to a child, because they haven't yet developed social norms, I suppose.
Yeah, my dad was an athlete, but now he's pretty fat.
Oh no, my dad. Pretty fat. She did go up.
He used to eat like 2 liters of ice cream every single night. Like
Every single night.
those Murray salted caramel ones.
Often what will happen is people get lost in their story. They'll keep telling the story and they'll go up at the end, and then the story's over, but they haven't finished it. So then they have to say something at the end. Yeah. And the yeah at the end will be the full stop to their story. Or they'll finish by going, and it was really funny.
Then he had to suck his gut in for photos. It was really funny.
So they'll finish it on something that doesn't need to be said, but because they've finished on an up, they have to bring it back down to let you know.
Man, they were going into social linguistics and a little psychology in there.
The story's finished. So there is a question to ask about this, and that is, why do we do this? Why does everything go up at the end?
If you're aware, we all go up at the end of every sentence. Because we're all too insecure to actually make a statement. So we have to make it sound like it's a question. Because we secretly need your approval.
My opinion of this is that Australians are generally quite polite.
Right.
Being very general. But I think it's kind of a polite habit to include the other person. It's almost like I'm telling you a story and I really want you to understand. So it's like I'm...
Understand? Man, this is fascinating. I don't want to watch the whole thing, but she's great. Give her a like. I'm going to subscribe. Does she still post? Something I like checking just for you. 3 years ago, oh no. She stopped posting. That's a shame. I hope she comes back. But anyways, then there isn't really much point in subscribing, really. Then we will see. I'll keep the subscription for a little bit, see if she comes back. If she doesn't, I'll just, then there is no point. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. But this is just chapter 1. I'm going to have to find some Australians. Oh, I have one in mind. Should I invite him over once? Have him teach me Australian. How about that? We might do that in the next video. See you tomorrow.